Conor O'Neill here from Everyday Athlete, where we work with everyday athletes who want to pursue their athletic goals in endurance running, strength training, physique change, and sport. In this podcast, my guests and I discuss principles, strategies, and stories that may help you in pursuit of your own athletic goals and in your life outside of that too. I remember seeing a clip of the Underdogs TG4 series, and I remember seeing the clip of Paul Galvin as one of the coaches talking to you about having all the physical capabilities and skill and everything else, but struggling due to a lack of confidence, and that not allowing you to go out and express that. And I wonder, at the time, did you agree with what he was saying? And is it something that you feel you've had to work on over time?
Yeah, no, he was 100% right in saying that. Like, during the Underdogs, again, not using this as an excuse for me, everyone was in the same boat. It was in the middle of club championships as well. So people were kind of reserving themselves. That was obviously the main priority at the time, was your own club championship. And this was on at the same time. So you wanted to give it as much respect as you could without taking away from your club championship. So it was definitely 100% times I was holding myself back in terms of the game that he was referring to, where I was pulling out of balls or something. I had travelled down I was living in Dublin at the time. I travelled from Dublin to Kerry on a Friday. It was supposed to be a light kick around in the Kerry training ground. We ended up having a very good hour-long training session, a bit of game at the end, which I didn't necessarily want to do. Travelled back home for a championship game on Saturday, played the full game, travelled back down to Kerry on the Saturday night. You know, you're not getting much food, you're not getting much sleep, 10 of you in a hostel together, and then you're playing a game on a Sunday. You're never going to be ready to play a game in that sense. So I was just trying to go through the motions. I wasn't up for nomination. I was kind of, playing it safe because I didn't really have to showcase anything. Now, you're trying to play as best you can, but your legs are heavy, you're feeling tired, you're fatigued. So that was kind of, leading into training sessions then, because I wouldn't have been in the bottom three before that. I got very complacent. I got very like, it's grand, sure, I'm not getting picked up here, I'm starting the games. And at the time, my training was all wrong outside of the GAA trainings then as well. So check out the Underdogs and check out Club Championship. I was probably going to the gym probably 5 times a week. And this is in July, August time when this was going on. Obviously, I was doing way too much. Like, I was still doing bodybuilding style workouts, heavy leg days, heavy upper body days. My nutrition wasn't fantastic. I nipped the bud in my nutrition earlier on in the year. I had dropped down to stupid levels of leanness just because I wanted to look a certain way, to post a picture on Instagram or to show, look how good my abs look. So I caught that around April, May time. In fairness to myself, I stopped the shite eating, as in cutting out carbs and doing all the stupid diets, but I wasn't still fueling myself correctly. So we got weighed, and the first week at the Underdogs I was 78.3. I still remember the numbers because how significant it was. And we got weighed it was the very last camp. We got weighed again to test our body composition again. And I was tracking food. I was eating nearly 4,000 calories consistently. It wasn't a case I did it for a week and stopped. I was horsing down these shakes and everything. And I put on 0.3 of a kilo in 3 months. And that was just down to, I was training Underdogs, I was training club, and I was training the gym 5 times a week. And I probably had a bit of that mental fatigue as well of, I'm doing everything, but my performances on the pitch aren't improving because I was training the wrong way. I was doing bodybuilding work. I was trying to improve my GAA performance. You're doing these camps, which are fantastic. I wouldn't change anything about the Underdogs way. Possibly doing it at a different time, but the way that was done, I wouldn't have not done it for the sake of it either. But I was trying harder to play better, which meant I was doing stuff I wasn't normally doing. I was really tense. I wasn't confident in myself because the more harder I was trying, the worse my performances were going. I ended up getting dropped then for the club. I was playing in Carrick and Shannon at the time. I got dropped for the club because I was missing trainings with the Underdogs. I was playing shite when I was playing, and I was just generally my mood and my confidence in myself was quite low. And like that, it would have been an area I struggled with when I was younger. I would have had a terrible habit of, if I missed an easy shot or if I missed a free kick or something, I'd put the head down and I'd be really down on myself, and I could be out of a game. If I missed one early on in the game, that was me done for the game, forget about it. Whereas obviously I've worked on that over the years now. It's like, if I miss a shot, right, that's it, end off, on to the next ball. But when I was young, when you're 15, 16, you miss a shot, all of a sudden it's the end of the world, especially if it's at a trial game or if it's at a county game or something, you do something wrong. You're I'm going to get dropped now, they're going to tell me I'm never going to play football ever again, and you build it up to make it worse than it actually is. So that kind of mindset had been creeping back into me then as well. When you're told your performances aren't where we want you to be, you have all the tools there, but you're not using the tools. So what good are the tools, basically? And like that clip with Paul Gavin or Ray Silk, I was actually telling them I had a championship game the next day. So I was up to tell them I'm not going to be around tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, we want to chat to you. And all the cameramen come running over. Like, oh shit, what's going on here? And with that, like, I played the championship game the next day, and then I was in the bottom three then for Sunday. So I didn't know I was in the bottom three until the warm-up of the game. Two lads had been told on the Saturday that they were in the bottom three, and I wasn't there, and there wasn't a final third mentioned. So I kind of put two and two together after the chat had on the Friday, not been there on the Saturday, and one person still left to go, and there was only one or two of the lads who were away. I kind of put two and two together. I knew that I was going to be in the bottom three, which kind of was the best thing that happened, in a sense that I got dropped for the game on the Saturday, so my conference was shite. They had the chat with me. They told me I was in the bottom three in the warm-up. So I was like, right, at this stage now, I've got absolutely nothing else to lose. I'm just going to go out and kind of play football. So I kind of took all the pressure off myself, because I was like, I'm not trying to impress anyone now at this stage. I kind of told myself, you're going to be dropped. Look at the way it is. The two other lads that are up for nomination were really good players as well. They just hadn't been around as much because one thing or another, holidays or club or whatever the case was. And there were two Dublin lads as well, so they were playing at a higher level than me anyway. I told myself, look, you're probably not going to get through this anyway. Just go out and enjoy yourself. And I took all the pressure off myself then, and ended up playing a really good game. I scored 2 goals and nearly could have got a hat-trick if I was lucky enough, and ended up going through then into the final team and starting the final game. But that mindset at the time, it was terrible. And I think it was more so a mental fatigue and a mental draining thing more than an ability thing, because as I said, like, I had not been a cocky arsehole or anything. I had the tools, I looked the part, I had all the tools, but I wasn't doing it, and that was just down to my own self-talk and I wouldn't say self-worth, the way I was talking to myself and the way that I was approaching my own training. It's like, if I made a mistake, I was so critical. I was overly critical on, why did you make that mistake for? Why are you doing that for? And not like looking for a solution, just kind of reiterating, that was shite. Jesus, you're really bad at that. And kind of these negative self-talk, I was kind of compounding that on mistakes. And the more I was doing that, the more I was going into myself, becoming a bit of a shell, and then making more mistakes and been afraid then to do anything else. So then you're not going to make any impact on a game if all you're doing is, if you're getting the ball, you're giving it off straight away, because I don't want to make a mistake here. I'm so afraid of making a mistake, I don't even want the ball. So then again, you might be making the runs you normally make, because if I make a run there, they're going to kick me the ball. And if I know I'm not confident I mightn't win that, then I look worse. So I'm just not going to make a run at all. So then it's kind of a funny thing. You go into a spiral of this negative self-talk and this negative view of your own abilities. Whereas after that game, when I played really well and I kind of nearly took the shackles off and said, forget about it, look, just go out and play, it doesn't matter at this stage. The following game then, we played UCD in a game, I scored 1-1 in that game, and that put me into the starting team. It was just about like peaking at the right time, like everything just came together right, that I had 2 really good games back to back, and that meant that I started in the final game. But if I wasn't put in the final 3, and if I didn't have that chat with someone, I could have carried on with that mindset, and I got back into the team for club championship. We got to the semi-final. I got back into the team then, because my performances started going up. I was more confident in myself during training sessions then. As opposed to what I had done initially was just be sulk and kind of go, I'm not starting, no, fuck this. I said to the managers, like, look, what do I need to do to get back into this team? Look, obviously what I'm doing is wrong. Just if you let me know what I'm doing is right, or what I need to do, I'll work on that. And he actually said, look, Gary, the last 2 weeks you've been really good. If you keep that up for the next 2 weeks, you'll more than likely get back into the team. Not be in a bullshitting way. If he'd said do X, Y, and Z, I would have done X, Y, and Z. But at the time when I was dropped for the first game, was like the last league game. Oh, they're not picking me because I transferred. They're not picking me. They're picking him because of this, that, and the other. And looking at everything else apart from myself and my own performances. Whereas when I kind of took that step back and kind of realised, right, I'm the only person now that can control this and that can change this is myself, and kind of not changing my mindset. It's not going to happen overnight, but kind of just taking ownership of what I've been doing wrong, what I have done well, and I had the examples of what I had done well from previous games, from previous years, and that game when I was in the bottom 3, I had recent examples as well of, you can do this, you are good enough to do this, what did you do that day that you can now do going forward? So then I cut my gym sessions back to 2 or 3 sessions a week. I was focusing more on my sleep, I was focusing more on my rest, where I was working 9 to 5 at the time, I could have been going to the gym, 6 o'clock in the morning, working to the evening time, then going out and kicking ball in the evening time because I'm annoyed my shooting isn't great, and getting 6 hours sleep. And you're doing that for maybe 3 or 4 days of the week during the week. At the weekend, then you had your training camps where you had your thing. I was just burnt out, and I was going to probably lead to an injury if I kept going that way. And my mental fatigue, as I said already, wasn't great at all. So just pulling it right back, kind of focusing on the simple things, focusing on your nutrition, focusing on your sleep, just doing enough gym work to get you by. Like, I really enjoyed the gym, so that's probably why it was another outlet for me at the time as well, that I was able to take some frustration out in the gym, going 5 days a week along with my trainings and that. And I might feel like, I'm doing all the work in the world, but when it came to the one thing that I wanted to improve, which was my GAA performance, that was the one needle that wasn't moving in the right direction. That was one going the other way. So I'm doing all the gym and look great, have abs and arms and that, but what I wanted to improve on the most was GAA performance that wasn't going the right way. So I kind of had to take a step back, reassess everything, and thankfully I caught it just in time.
Yeah, there's a lot to touch on there. The one thing that stood out the most was that, I suppose, irony that we often think by putting huge amounts of pressure on ourselves, or by speaking to ourselves in this berating sort of way, that it will actually help us. You do think that. You think that talking to yourself negatively, and it's almost like you're, right, let's go. You think it'll give you that level of motivation, but I find that what it ends up doing instead is just putting you in a position, as you mentioned, of feeling unsafe to take risks, unsafe to go out and do the thing is right, but might not go to plan. Taking a shot on that's a little bit out of your range, but you probably have within you, or getting on the ball or looking for the ball. And I spoke with Garrett Fox on an episode previously about this, and he says one of the biggest things when he's working with a team is fostering a sense of safety, and that allowing you to then be able to go out and take on the shots that you have in you, but might not go your way, or go out and get on the ball because you're not afraid of messing up. And obviously that having an improvement in your ability to actually contribute to the team. And it sounds like you were just in that state of not feeling safe enough to do that, both self-imposed and potentially from different experiences that you had. Because I know you mentioned as well previously about county minor team setups, and not making it to the level you wanted within those teams as well, and potentially that contributing to sort of that potentially lack of confidence to do things too. But I wonder, that experience of having to address those issues with confidence, has that helped you relate to potentially people who are following you online or people that you're working with?
Yeah, 100%. It's, I suppose, when I grew online and I was chatting to people, the more common you see that this issue is, and again, not that it made me feel better, it was like, if I have this experience and I have one or two messages with someone the same, how many people have a similar issue that haven't said it to someone else and haven't mentioned it? So what's the kind of saying, if one person says it, probably 10 other people are thinking it, or something, some quote like that, or whatever the way the quote goes. And I think as well, just with the self-talk and, had taken shots on and stuff, I think there's a fine line between holding yourself to a high standard and then being unrealistic with your abilities. And this is a thing that I tend to come across at younger lads, more so than anyone else, just with the conversations I've had, that they might see Shane Walsh or David Clifford going out and kicking these unbelievable scores, and in reality they're probably the only two people in the country that can do it, or Rian O'Neill, let's use an Armagh example here as well, that they're trying to replicate what the top players in the country are doing at senior inter-county level, and they're trying to do that under 16, and they're holding themselves to these standards of the best players ever. Let's just say that as an example. They're looking at highlights on YouTube, and they're looking at all the greats and Gooch and Peter Canavan and all these lads, and that's the standard that they're trying to hold themselves to, where in reality they're an under 16, maybe a Division 2 or Division 3 club player in, let's use Roscommon, which isn't a powerhouse in county. Let's use a 16-year-old me, for example. I'd be looking at these players trying to replicate what the best players ever are doing. And when I'm playing at Division 3 or Roscommon under 16, and I'm not doing that, that's when I'm getting annoyed, and that's when I'm getting upset at myself, and I'm shite, I'm not able to do that. Whereas a point for me might be I can win a ball every time it's kicked into me. I can pass it to a man coming off the shoulder, and every time I do that, we can 9 times out of 10 we get a point, or 8 times out of 10 we get a point off that. That's a high standard for me myself. And if I get a game then where maybe that happens 5 times out of 10 as opposed to 8 times out of 10, then I can say, right, okay, normally Gary, you're doing this a lot more times than that. You need to up your game here a little bit. That's kind of holding yourself to a high standard, as opposed to I'm not able to kick an outside the boot sideline shot in the 45 that I've never once done in my life. But when I reevaluate my game, I'm saying I had a shit game because I wasn't able to do that. But online, I think half my thing online is I'm documenting what I go through myself. And that's how I started initially. It was, this is how I work out, this is how I eat, these are drills that I do. Because as I said, I was working 9 to 5 and I started the page initially, and then the way it progressed and the way it grew, I had my PT cert anyway. I got that in 2018. I started the page in 2019. I kind of had an idea that I might want to move into that, possibly on even just to help my teammates or help people I know. But just with the way that the page grew and that I was able to share my experience, like this had took a long time to do that. I suppose, like, I think everyone is the same with the starter page online. It's a highlight reel. You show all the best bits and look how great I am. You might be saying it, but that's what you're doing, and that's exactly what I was doing. Get clips from games, get clips from Underdog. Go, look how great I am. Paul Galvin said I'm class. I know you get this kind of. It's a way of just like that, I suppose, for your mindset. And that's, at the time, it's probably something I needed to do for myself to kind of build that confidence back into myself coming off the Underdogs. I was a little bit low in confidence. I was a little bit low in self-belief. That this was a way for me to kind of reaffirm those, as if that's what you want to self-talk, that look, I can do this. I have clips here from games of me playing well. I'm going to share that, but not only just as a point of, oh, look how great I am. I then kind of tie it back into this is what I do outside of games, which allows me to go on and do that. With online, I said recently, I think it was my own page, that you are going to get hate eventually online. Like it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And I was fortunate enough that I didn't get any hate or negative comments for a while until the page had grew. Now, I have quite thick skin anyway. I grew up in a friend group that had no problem taking the piss out of you about this, that, or anything. So I have no problem with people making fun of me. That's fine. Like, and I know when I started the page first, people were making fun of me. And I know people that what they're doing behind your back. That's fine. I knew that was going to happen. So that's fine. I'm not worried about that. It's when, I suppose, people are questioning your methods or questioning what you're saying, if it's right or wrong, was a little bit where people can fall off and not want to help more people. If someone says you're a bollocks, you're completely wrong in saying that, that's not going to help anyone. Whereas I suppose the DMs and what people don't see online is where you're helping more people. Like that, tying back to the question of trying to help people online in a similar scenario. So if I share that clip with the Paul Galvin clip, for example, I had a few people in a similar area, or it's a quite common theme. Usually around summertime, it tends to be, I'm not confident at the moment, my performances are going bad. And like that, you ask them what they're doing at the moment, then it's the same thing I was doing. I'm going down to the pitch more times a week, I'm adding in extra spinning sessions and going to the gym more often now than I was beforehand. Whereas what they need to do is just take it back. And you talk to them then in a couple of weeks, you ask them how they're getting on, you just got a little bit of a follow-up. So yeah, I took your advice. Again, not my advice, I'm sure they asked many other coaches out there and hopefully we'll get a similar answer. But take it back. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself. Don't be holding yourself to an unrealistic standard that you know you're not going to be able to do. Because that was one of the points I was making. Like, why do you think you're playing bad? It's because, I usually score 1-7 in the game and now I'm only scoring 3 points. I was like, well, 3 points is still a lot. Like, at underage level, you probably do shoot the lights out and you score these ridiculous score lines. But maybe in championship, like it won't be a 9-17 to 4-24 game. It might be a really tight competitive game, a 1-14 to 1-16. And if you're contributing 3 points in that score line, that's as good as getting 1-7 in a score line that's ridiculous, like 9-20 something that you do see happening on underage. So when you kind of put the context to it and you get the full picture, and a lot of the times you try and let the person get to the answer by themselves so they kind of realize it, as opposed to me. Everyone wants the answer and everyone wants to know everything and they want to know the answer yesterday and they want a black and white answer for everything, which obviously isn't the case. Everything has, peaks and troughs and bobs and weaves and I's and T's and all. There's not one scenario that's going to suit everyone. You have to try and find individual things that's going to help a person, and like what might work for me won't work for you. What works for you mightn't work for Mick or John or Tom. So everyone has their own little ways of dealing with stuff then as well. So trying to come into terms these young individuals of, okay, why am I feeling this way? What can I do to improve it? And, what's the plan so I can improve on that? It's all well and good and saying, I'm scoring 3 points a game, I want to score 1-7. That's grand. Okay, there's a goal. There's where we are at the moment. There's our goal. There's our target. How are we going to get there? Asking me or asking you the question, that might be step number 1, but what's step 2? What's step 3? What's step 4? You can't just go from A to Z without following the rest of the steps in between. I think that's, like, for example, a question I do always get, and I can't even kick 45s myself, but how can I kick a 45? I was like, right, what's your distance at the moment? Oh, I don't know, I don't kick them. It's like, right, let's forget about kicking a 45. Let's bring the ball into the 13-metre line and kick it over the bar from there and find your technique, and then bring it out slowly over time. You're not going to go from never kicking a 45 in your life, even attempting kicking the ball off the ground, putting it down on the 45-metre line, following someone else's technique, following what Rory Beggan or Niall Morgan do, and then swinging over the bar. Maybe there is people out there that can do it, but there's going to be steps you need to follow to get to that place. So I suppose, I know I got on a tangent there again, but the question tying it back into people having similar scenarios is finding their own individual issues that they're having. Like, sometimes it could be a case that, it's pressure from outside the club, where they feel like they have to play at a certain standard because their dad and their uncle is watching the game, and their uncle said to them, like, it might be a passing comment, but children hold on to phrases and hold on to things people say in different ways. And it might be a case that someone said, oh, you're going to be a county player, but all of a sudden then they feel like, oh, I have to be this county player every single time I step onto this pitch because Mr. Man over there said that I could play for county someday. So they put this unwanted pressure on themselves that they have to be the absolute pinnacle of a footballer every single time they step onto the pitch. And then that kind of cause that mental burnout again, that if they are playing really, really well, if they are 7 out of 10 every single day, they're annoyed they're not a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Whereas, like, sometimes it's passing comment, sometimes it is that pressure coming from home, and maybe their dad is living vicariously through them. It's like, I want you to go on and be the footballer I never was. Obviously, there's going to be different situations for different people, but that was just a recent example I had. A couple of older lads in the club said to a young lad, oh, your county standard, you're going to go on and play for the county team. Like, in an encouraging way. But he took it in a sense that, oh, I have so much pressure that I need to perform every time I step onto the pitch. And this is an under 14 player. It's like, right, just relax, take it back. They said that as in terms of encouragement. Don't be worrying about anyone else. What's your manager asking you? That's the most important thing. What do you do for your team? What does your manager want you to do for your team? Forget about anyone else for the minute. If you can help your team win games, you're going in the right direction. That's what a county manager might want to see, as opposed to you being a greedy bollocks and running up and down the pitch all day, and you might score 7 points, but if your team loses and you're not passing to anyone else, I don't think any manager would want that on their team. So it's what does the manager want? How can you contribute to the team? And if you are playing well outside of that, and if you want to impress your dad or your uncle, because that, look, been realistic, that's also a part of it as well, wanting to prove, or not prove it to someone else, but you want to make someone proud. But your dad proud, your uncle proud, maybe older brothers as well, who are really good for the club. You want to hold yourself to that standard. But again, going back to what I said, be realistic with the standards you're holding yourself to, not being, oh, if my brother plays for county, I need to be better than him. Play within your own abilities, and as long as we're improving those abilities over time, I think everyone is moving in the right direction. Now, as I said, easier said than done, but I think it went a bit of a tangent there, but I covered some of the answer.
Yeah, very well. Points well made. It sounds a lot like the journey that you've been on, and I think it probably is something that comes with age as well, is one of balance, and having the balance of the positive pressures, as you say, of things like wanting to make people proud, wanting to fulfill your ability, but not having it taken so seriously that it ends up being detrimental and put too much pressure on you, especially at a younger age. But also the balance, I think, then, of something else you've mentioned around the balance of how much time you're dedicating to things that can be beneficial, but when taken to the extreme can actually be detrimental, when we're talking about things like extra sessions, extra gym work, extra runs, whatever it is. And that can probably come from an element of insecurity that you're not doing enough. But having the sensibility to know that there's a correlation between those inputs and the outcomes, and it sounds like that's something that you had to come to terms with and realize that, yes, I'm doing the right things, but I'm maybe doing too much of them. I maybe spend too much time in the gym, spending too much time obsessing over body composition, these other elements. And have you found that now, and it certainly seems like this from the outside looking in, that you've gotten a good balance of those things, and that you're now, it seems like, as I say, from the outside looking in, that you've gotten a real good balance between putting in the hard work, doing what's needed done, but also not letting it take over your life?
Yeah, I think I'm 30 now, and I'm playing since I'm 16. So it's taken me 14, 15 years to kind of feel like I finally have a good balance and a good grasp on what my body responds well to, what my body needs, and also covering the basics of the game. And I think, especially in this day and age, there's so much emphasis put on the conditioning and strength, which, look, it has a massive part of the game, and not to have the old school approach as a waste of time. We know it's not a waste of time, but a big mistake I mentioned at that time in the Underdogs, that I put more focus onto the strength and conditioning side of things as opposed to the basics of the game, which was my first touch, my kick and my passing, that I would have been more confident if I was working more on those things. Now, that you might have the most gifted footballer on your team who's also the unfittest and slowest. So, look, they can kick a point all day. If you give them a bit of time and a bit of space, or they'll kick frees all day, like they're placed in the team nearly probably 9 times out of 10 they're going to be starting. But they could be a way better player if they're able to focus on improving their conditioning, maybe reducing some body fat, improving their speed, improving their conditioning as well. Whereas someone else who might be, and this is probably more the common scenario nowadays, they're the fittest in the team, they're the fastest on the team, they're the biggest and strongest on the team, but when it comes to the actual execution of skills, they're not great at it. Now, you look at the GPS vests, for example, which I think most top clubs have at the moment, or a lot of individuals have them now at the moment as well. That metrics that they're looking at is, I want to cover the most distance in the game and I want to be fastest in the game, but they're not too worried about how often they get on the ball and how they actually impact the game, which that's not a worrying statistic or anything else like that. But I did a poll, it must have been about a year ago now, and I was actually very surprised. The question was, would you rather have the most possessions in the game or cover the most distance in the game? And it was like maybe 60-40, which in favour of most possessions. But that 40% I thought was a little bit, Jesus, that many of you would rather just run around and not touch a ball at all just to get the most distance covered, as opposed to impacting the game as best you could by getting on most possessions. I kind of had a few conversations with people in DMs then, and I was like, oh yeah, but the feeling you get when you cover the most distance is great. I was like, why don't you do long endurance runs and cover a certain distance at a certain time? So I don't want that. I want to play football. I was like, well, what's the main goal for playing football? I want to win something. I was like, well, what do you think is going to be more beneficial for your team? You getting on more ball or you just running around? And kind of, I didn't think of it that way. And maybe not been an arsehole with them. I just trying to have that open conversation with that. And like looking back at mistakes I had when I was younger, was wanting to be the fastest. I never was the fittest, and I don't think I ever will be the fittest. My condition work isn't my strong point, but I'm always trying to improve on that. Whereas in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, more so after the Underdogs, when it really kind of opened up. Like when I was doing the Underdogs, I thought I was going to play county. I've said that before, and that was my goal, that was my ambition, that was my last throw of the dice. I didn't make it underage. I transferred to a team in Leitrim. I thought if it was the Underdogs while in Leitrim that I had a good chance of making that team. I didn't make it. That was kind of the eye opener for me, that you're not inter-county standard. And this is the reason why you're not inter-county standard. It was my skills work wasn't where it needed to be, and my fitness wasn't where it needed to be. So then I kind of put a little bit more focus then on my skills work of the game, which is more important. That, your shot execution, your high percentage of shots. If you're in around, everyone knows the scoring zone. You have the curve around the D and you have the curve around the 21 and 13. My shot percentages wasn't fantastic in that scoring zone. You're all well and good scoring on 13 if you're running towards goal, you're fisting it over. But I was thinking, like, okay, that's a big area for me. If I'm a corner forward and I'm not scoring high percentages in around the scoring zone, that's a problem for me. So I started putting a little bit more focus on the skills work of the game. That's when I kind of start documenting what I'm doing myself with the page then as well. Different shooting drills. I had a lot of videos when I was in Galway at the time. Me and my housemate would go down and do these different kind of shooting drills as well. That you can bring into your game So a mistake that I would have made when I was like 14 or 15, you go up to the pitch with a bag of balls and you just take free kicks for an hour, and you mightn't be the free kick taker. And I think that's a mistake people make. Again, if you're with a group of lads, you're going to do it. You're going to challenge each other. Oh, shoot, take a shot from there, take a shot from here, outside the booth from here and there. Whereas even if you just had 10 minutes of a bit of gameplay, a bit of speed in it, then it's going to help you. Like if you're shooting on the run, if you're a wing back or a wing forward and you're running at goals and you're very poor at that shooting on the run at speed, that's an area you need to take time to work on. Or whereas if you're a corner forward and you're catching the ball and you're turning and shooting, that was my weak area. I wasn't scoring high percentages when I was catching the ball back to goals, turning and shooting. I'm going to encounter that a lot more during the game than running directly at goals, just what your position is. So if your strong point is running at goals and shooting, and you're constantly doing that, like, that's great, you're going to feel great after doing that session. But what can you work on instead of doing a full session dedicated to your strong point? Is it turning on or shooting on the turn? Is it shooting off your left foot? You're always on your right side, but anytime you cut back into your left because someone puts you onto your left, you never score from there. Okay, there's something different to work on. And again, people like working on their strong things because it makes them feel good and they get good, get good results, because I'm good and I'm strong at this. I'm going to keep doing this and get better at it, and I'm going to ignore the person I'm weak at. Like, I recently went down to PD Performance. I know he's on the podcast here too recently as well. My weak point for me was my top end speed. Like, acceleration is one of my strong points, and it's a metric I'm quite good at. But over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been doing a lot of long contact time jumps, trap bar deadlifts, box squats, all these big heavy movements where I'm a long contact time on the ground, but my reactivity off the ground when that translated over top end speed wasn't fantastic. So, like, I always win the ball out in front, but if I have to chase someone back, I'm never getting anywhere near them. So they're right. Something needs to be improved here now. I could work on my acceleration for the next 10 years and feel great about myself because, oh, look how good I am at this thing, but I'm going to ignore my top end speed and my reactivity. Whereas now, the last probably a month or two since I've been down with PD, that I've been working on this, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm not there yet, which is good. It means that I'm not happy with my training, so I'm going to put more effort in. If I'm always happy in my training that, oh, there's a trap bar deadlift and there's a broad jump, I'm class, look how far I jumped, I'm a deadly, and then I get complacent because it's at a decent weight and it's a decent jump, whereas I'm doing these A skips and A switches and my rhythm on one side isn't right. It's good when I do it on my left side, not great when I'm doing it on my right side. So I'm getting frustrated because I know I can make improvements on that. But that makes me personally, I'm like, right, that's my training is enjoyable now because it's something I'm not good at. I want to keep doing this until I am really good at it. And when I hit that, when I'm good at something else, I'm going to try and find a new goal to work towards. And mistakes I would have made in the past was, I have a goal for myself. Let's just say 2.5 times your body weight in trap bar deadlift. Hit that, great. And it's going to keep doing that now. There's no goal past that. Same with bench press. You hit a goal in bench press. Okay, that's great. I'm just going to keep doing bench press now. I'm not going to look at anything that's different because, oh, should I have a big bench? I'm high class. Whereas maybe, okay, Gary, you need to maybe hit a 320 1K time trial. Maybe that would be more beneficial to your game than getting a 1.5 times bench press to 1.6. So there's always going to be something you can work on, and everyone is going to have something different. But I suppose, again, I'm going on a tangent at every question you've asked me. The main thing is every player will have an area that they need to work on individually, and it might be a case you need to do it on your own. Like, if you are a younger player and you hang around with your friends a lot and you go to the pitch and you do this and that and the other, it might just be a time you need to set aside an hour, half an hour to an hour for yourself to work on a certain thing. And look, there's going to be times, especially underage teams, and if you have a bad team environment, not saying they don't exist, that if you're going to the pitch a half an hour early to kick a few balls, you might be seen as a lick arse and people might make fun of you. Look, not every team has that positive team environment, because I have had conversations, and with girls as well. I'm surprised about how toxic some of the girl environments are about wanting to get better and wanting to get faster. I suppose that's the thing with teenage girls. It kind of be, that's why a lot of them fall out of love with sport, not just GAA, that they get kind of toxic friends that are more, you get to a certain age, you have different interests other than football. Obviously, it's not going to be everyone's life, but that can kind of drip feed down to, well, if all my friends aren't doing it, I'm going to stop playing then as well, which is really disappointing when you can see someone is interested in that. And if their team have this bad environment and all the girls leave the team then, and you don't want to be the only one of your friend group that's still going because they're all making fun of you. Again, these are conversations and examples I've had in my DMs of people wanting to stay involved. It's like, how can you improve as a player if that's the environment, which it could be the case. But if you can, work on your weak areas. Skills are going to be the most important, but then what's your weakest area outside your skills then? Is it your fitness? Is it your strength? Is it your power? Is it a combination of all things? And just having some kind of plan in place to get from A to B, as we mentioned earlier.
Yep. Yeah, it's very important that about actually being able to speak to young people in that way, because I know coming through, and it sounds like you were the same, underage, you would have taken things seriously and you would have, done the extra bit of training outside even from a young age. And there was that bit of resistance that you would have felt from other lads and a bit of slagging and whatever else, that's fine. But it could have very easily become discouraging. And not only for sport, but if you're constantly getting the messaging from other people that going the extra mile and doing the extra bit is actually a negative thing, that's going to probably translate into other areas of your life too, and you're going to go into a workplace environment maybe and not go the extra mile because you just maybe have this self-conscious or subconscious idea that trying hard is actually a negative thing, or as you say, you become the lick arse or whatever else. And I think that's one of probably the positives of social media, is that you're able to, even a young person now is able to get those messages from someone they're able to look up to a lot more easily than maybe would have possibly been previously possible. When it comes to then the excessive potentially amount of training that you're doing, and even the excessive amounts of gym work focus that you had before, and then transition, as you mentioned, towards getting the balance of that right, but now even pushing towards looking at other elements where it's not just about strength, and it's not just about looking at that top end strength and those type of things. There's been a big transition of your focus. So I wonder, what does a current training week look like for you? Because that'd be beneficial to someone listening, I think, because they'll know that you have come from that space of doing too much, focusing on a lot of different areas, and obviously being a player, playing at all various levels and having a good balance as well. So I think it'd be very, very beneficial to actually hear what your current training week looks like.
Yeah, so we can use this week as an example, and we've championship next week, as I said. So this week we've challenge game tonight on a Friday. So our team's usually out Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. I think majority of teams are the same, or adult teams anyway, to allow lads from away to go back on a Friday and a Sunday morning. So those 3 days are dedicated for the team. So on a Monday at the moment, I'm hitting a full body strength focus session. Again, people kind of hear strength focus and they think you're doing a 1 rep max and you're doing mental weights. I'll hit a push movement, a pull movement, a hip hinge variation, a squat variation, and a bit of core working as well there. So that'd be the likes of, just on Monday, for example, I hit a weighted pull up. I paired that with a med ball slam. I did an incline bench press. I did an RDL, sorry, I was going to say Nordic curl. I did an RDL because it's a game week. I just don't want to overload the quads too much. And I did a rear foot elevated split squat. And the weights I'm picking, I'm going for around 5 to 6 reps in those exercises. And I'm picking a weight where I have around 4 reps left in the tank for each set. So I'm only doing 3 sets on those exercises. I'm taking 2 minutes rest in between each set. And I'm not picking a weight where I'm maxing out at all. So I want around, especially more so in the leg exercises, around 4 reps left in the tank for each of those exercises. And for the upper body exercises, I might go maybe 3 reps left in the tank, because again, this is from experience over time, that I know if I go a little bit heavier in the upper body, I don't be as fatigued. Whereas if I went to 1 or 2 reps from failure, I'd be pushing that, fatigue level come to training then. Now, I also hit arms in most of my sessions as well, upper body and full body, because I enjoy training arms. I wanted them to look a certain way. I'm not going to pretend otherwise and to say that there's some magical benefit to training arms. I enjoy it. It keeps me on track long term. I consider it a little treat for myself that if I cover all these areas, as I mentioned there, push, pull, hip hinge variation, squat variation, your core work, your power work, my little treat at the end of my workouts then is doing my arm work, because it makes me feel good about myself. I have a bit of vanity. On a Tuesday then we have our club training, and what I've been doing recently is I hit my speed work and a speed session before the club training. Now this is only maybe 8 runs in total, and I'm working more so on the top end speed after being down my PD. I would have traditionally done a lot more acceleration work, again working on my strengths, but again, if you are poor at acceleration, this gives you time. So this takes me around 20 to 30 minutes. I warm up and make sure obviously you're nice and warm, everything's nice and ready, you have a few speed mechanic drills and that, maybe 8 runs total. So what I've been doing the last couple of days was a 10 meter fly into a 30 meter top end speed, and maybe then 4 of those and 4 30 meter sprints flat out. Again, not going too high in the distance side of things because I've trained in the evening time, but minimum 8 runs on that. And then I usually, because I'm quite fortunate that I can kind of come and go as I please with the online work, I might have a couple of hours before training then. But there has been times where if I get up to trainings at 8 o'clock, I'll go up to the pitch around 7, I'll get that work done, and then by the time I'm finished, people are starting to warm up for training, then I can grab a ball and maybe work on a little bit of skills work then as well, do my training session, go home then. So training session will be tough. I usually on a Wednesday I'll do a lighter upper body power focus session. Again, we're not going heavy on this at all, more so on the power. Like this week, for example, I did a bench press contrast with a plyo push-up. I did a pulling movement then. I did a dead stop dumbbell row. They were my two main exercises. Again, going for 5 reps, 2 minutes rest in between, trying to move the bar as quick as possible, trying to be explosive with the push-up, trying to move the dumbbell as quick as possible. When I have that main work done, again, 3 sets in those, I might do a little bit of hypertrophy work then as well. So maybe a row variation. I did a shoulder press. I did a little bit of arms and a little bit of core. Again, that's just, again, my little treat to finish off the session. Not going anywhere near failure with that, but just a little bit of upper body work because I enjoy doing it. On a Thursday then, I do a lower body speed focus session. So I don't use any weights on this at all. This is my tailored program from PT Performance. So this isn't going to match what everyone's goal is. So you're going to maybe, I have loads of examples on my page. Everyone has loads of examples. I'm not trying to push myself here. But for me, at the moment, it's that reactivity work. It's holding that top end sprint position, getting the knee high, getting that the range finders and stuff. So I have an example there. Maybe some, I have a spinal engine series. I'm doing some rotation work. I'm doing some elevated A skips or elevated A switches, trying to get that reactivity, getting the rhythm right on the legs, doing skipping, five minutes of skipping. So again, you're trying to get your feet off the ground as quick as possible. You're not going up, I was going up too much my toe on my left side as opposed to my right side, so trying to get that ball of the foot under the ground. So very specific things I'm working on as well, hip locks and stuff like that. So I don't touch a weight on that lower body day, which I suppose essentially becomes a primer then as well. So I have a game then this evening, so Friday, game is at 8, and for a primer session then you're looking at lengths from 8 to 32 hours before throw-in. So I went to the gym yesterday, it was around 2 o'clock in the day. Throw-in this evening is going to be at 8 o'clock, so I'm in that window of, I know that I still have the benefits from a primer. I didn't go heavy weights. I could have went on and did, previously when I was doing primers, I've done squats, I've done deadlifts, a lower weight, high intensity, and I find them beneficial. But because I have certain things I want to work on, I want to make sure I get that work done during the week. Friday then, as I said, we have the game tonight, or for example, we have a training session. I continue that as a normal training session. Saturday, I will take as a complete rest day. I'm not going to do anything at all. And a mistake that I hear from people is, they'll say, oh, my rest day is I go to the gym and I do an upper body session. That's not a rest day. Like that, my Wednesday was my upper body training session day. People would say, oh, that's my rest day, but I go in and I do a heavy bench press and I do pull-ups and I do all this. Like, that's not a rest day. And I take a complete 100% rest day on Saturday. I might walk the dog, I might get out and do a little bit, but it's not strenuous on the body at all. Then on Sunday, then we're back onto the pitch. Usually is a lighter session on a Sunday, especially if we have a game on a Friday or a fairly intense training session on a Friday. It won't be as intense on a Sunday. Not saying we do nothing at all, but it won't be as taxing on the body. And then when that's during the morning time then as well, as opposed to an even training, you kind of have half the day Sunday to recover before you're kind of following the same process then again on Monday. So that's kind of my Monday to Sunday. This week I'm going to follow the exact same template next week, because this week is my tester for champions, my last trial error or my last dress rehearsal before championship week next week. So I know this week that I've everything done. My carb load yesterday, I'm going to eat the exact same food again next Thursday, which is the day before again I do my carb load. So this week is going to be exact same as next week, because the last thing I want to do next week is be worried about, oh, I didn't do X, I didn't do Y, I didn't do Z. Whereas I know this week I've everything done. Hopefully all going well, touch wood, I'll play good or I'll have a good performance in the game tonight. Then I'll know, okay, that's worked well for me. This is something I've been doing the last couple of games leading into it, depending on what day they're on. Kind of, if I had a Saturday game, I'd move everything back a day or I'd move everything forward a day depending on what needs to be done. Maybe I don't do an upper and lower body session separately. I might do 2 full body sessions in the week and allow that extra rest day depending on what day the games are on. But that's kind of the way that I work at the moment. The gym work has taken a step back. It's not intense. I'm not going anywhere near 1 rep max weight at all. Like with the likes, and this is so subjective to everyone then as well. They might see someone lifting massive weights, but for them it's not a big weight at all. Like you look at the rugby players, and a lot of the highlights now. I know GAA take a lot from those rugby players, and strength and conditioning work is quite beneficial for both. But even the recent test series Ireland were doing, some of them were like box squatting 200 kilos the week of a game. It's like, yes, but you have to understand that a prop forward in rugby, a professional rugby, isn't your average Joe who's playing GAA twice a week and maybe a game on the weekend. So don't be looking at anyone else's weight. Don't be looking at the professional athletes, how much weight are they lifting. I'm going to lift the same as what you call him, Keane Healy or Andrew Porter, because of he's like a 300 kilo squat. That's going to be completely different than someone whose max squat is probably 140 as it is. You're not going to be box squatting anywhere near these rugby players. take it with a pinch of salt when they're doing it. That's programmed on their max weight, so don't be worrying about what weight you're lifting. If you're only box squatting 80 kilos, but you feel really good and really powerful for the game the following day or for training the following day, that's what your weight is. And again, if you're going to the gym with a group of lads who aren't playing GAA and they're doing a Ronnie Coleman workout or a Tom Platz leg day or something, it's very easy to fall into, I'm going to do the same as well. I'm as strong as fast as ye and bigger and stronger than ye. And then you do that leg day, and then the next day in training, you're not able to wag. And the manager asks you why you just keep up in the runs. And then all of a sudden, then you've gone from the manager thinking you're really fit and strong to, Jesus, he's not able to move anymore. Then weights are slowing him down. Old school approach. It's very quick that can happen. So make sure in-season training is you've lots left in the tank. Main goal is GAA performance. And this is someone who has made this mistake far too many times over the years.
Yeah. The contrast between that and what you're doing previously is very strong, but what I know people do worry about still is in season and of 3, sometimes even 4 team sessions and / match, and the worry about doing anything at all outside of that in terms of gym work, in terms of running, anything else. And they might look at what you've said there, and you basically said you're sort of doing maybe 4 extra sessions outside of team sessions when you take into account gym and the sort of more speed and speed focused stuff. But it's important to recognize each of the things you mentioned there around those sessions. That leg session, you are going nowhere near failure. You're keeping it, light so that you can keep explosive and have high intent with that, but without the fatigue associated with the going to failure. With the upper body stuff, again, it's not one of those old school bodybuilding workouts. It has its elements of hypertrophy and strength, but there's a bit of power work in there as well, and you're doing it, it's once per week, maybe twice, I'm sure, at some parts of the season. And then obviously the other 2 sessions are focused specifically on things that you are trying to work on, and the volume is such that it's not going to take away too much from your ability to recover. You mentioned, I think, within the sprint session that you're doing on a Tuesday night, it's basically 8 reps within that half-hour period, which would probably surprise a lot of people that they would think that's nothing, 8 runs, but those are max intent, high rest, I'm presuming, reps that are going to be challenging to the body, but they're not going to take away from your ability to recover sufficiently to be going into training feeling run down or anything like that. So it's important, I think, for people probably listening and people outside that to recognize that that looking at the number of sessions you're doing per week isn't the only important factor to take into consideration. The intent within those sessions, the volume within those sessions, the exercise selection, all those things are really what makes the difference, I suppose, when it comes to that. And I think you've illustrated that very well when you've touched on each of those sessions and what you're working on and how you're manipulating them to suit your current goals and other training variables. So to switch gears a little bit, I'd like to get into a few more sort of personal and early questions, or sometimes quick fire, sometimes not, towards the end of the episode. But I know that you had previously, before any of this, had a career in biomedical engineering, if I'm correct. And I wondered, was that something that you had an interest in and went into because of that? Or was it more one of those career choices of not knowing what else to do?
Yeah, it was definitely not knowing what else to do. I always wanted to do sports science in UL growing up. I think everyone who plays GAA is either PE teaching or the sports science in UL, and I was nowhere near the points I needed to get that. I actually had I think I had computer science down in DCU, and I don't know why, but I think my friend was doing it. And when you're doing the CAO application, you kind of throw out here, then everywhere. They all put DCU because they have a decent football program up there. I was like, I didn't get the UL, and I had it was some kind of sports and recreational. I can't remember the proper name. It's sports like physiology in Sligo IT as well, and I didn't get that. But when I went to look at my leavings, if I appealed the results, I reckon I would have got enough points for that. But I kind of said, "Feck, no, I won't bother doing that. I'll repeat the leaving cert." And I lasted 3 days. And at the very end of the CAO offers, I think it's like after fourth round offers or something, there's vacant courses. So ones that they haven't filled the spaces for, you don't need the points for it. You can just apply and get into it if they accept you. And I seen in Sligo there was one. It was a higher certificate in science. It was a level 6 degree. So I think it was the first year, but they didn't even have any entry level CAO points on it. It was a level 6 2-year higher certificate. And I was like, feck it, like I'm not repeating the Leaving Cert, because initially when I wanted to repeat the Leaving Cert, I was like, it'd be okay. I kind of know all the topics. I was the first year of this new project maths, so it was the first year that had come in. So I had done 2 years of the old maths program or whatever. That's finished now. It's this completely new cycle of maths. I don't know half of it. With English stuff then as well, the movie is gone. The poems are different. The film is different. I have to kind of learn a whole new syllabus in 1 year as opposed to 2 years. And I was like, right, I know myself that it's going to be too much. I'm going to make a balls of it. I'm probably going to get a worse result if I go back and do this, because I'm going to be depressed enough as it is going back, repeating the Leaving Cert as it was. So I seen this higher certificate, I applied for it, I got in. And after the 2 years, we had 3 options then. We could go into forensics, pharmaceutical science, or biomedical science. And we kind of covered topics of all 3 subjects. We had a lot of combined stuff like maths, physics, chemistry, biology. We kind of had a lot of common ground, and then we had an elective. We had a couple of different choices we wanted to do. So it might be the likes of microbiology or something like that. And just the way that the topics fell, I was more interested in the biomedical science side of things. Like there were so many different things that I cover. I never did chemistry in school, but during the work we did in chemistry in the first year in college, the experiments are very interesting. It was like, you're doing stuff with chemicals and solutions and stuff like that, and you're getting results. And I kind of find it quite rewarding. I was like, oh yeah, I did that right. I got the result you're supposed to get. So I kind of was interested in that, and I really did enjoy the work. So after the 2 years, I went on to the biomedical science side of things. I did the level 7, and after that year, we had an option to elect on to go on to level 8. So I did biomedical science, or biomedical technology, but sorry, is the correct word for it. So I did all this down in Sligo. So I did the level 8 through coming from a level 6 to a level 7 to a level 8. So there's always a back door. And with this, I always tell like people, I know Leaving Cert is different now with different points, and I'm not sure how many subjects you do. I did my Leaving Cert in 2011, so I'm a long way out of it from there. But like, there's always going to be different ways and means of getting around things as well. Like I did that for 4 years, and now I'm working as an online PT. Like, it's just funny how things can change. But I used to work in the pharmaceutical industry for 5 years, and I really, really enjoyed it. I went in at an entry-level job doing data entry, just like working on Excel and spreadsheets. But once an opportunity arose in work, then I was able to move into the lab, and I really, really enjoyed it. I moved to Dublin. I was working in Pfizer. I was working in a chemistry lab. Really, really enjoyed the work. Wasn't too gone on Dublin. Moved to Galway then, working in Medtronic. It was more of a desk-based job. I thought I was going to be a little bit more lab involved in it, but again, like it was a safe job. Pay was good. It was very easy to stay there. It wasn't gone on the job, but 3 weeks and 4 days, or 3 weeks and 4 days out of 4 weeks. Like, geez, I'm not sure if this job is for me. You get your paycheck, and you're like, well, look, it's not too bad. It covers rent, and you have money here as well. So I stuck out that job for 8 months, and I had the PT cert. And at this stage, I had the page already set up, and the page was kind of getting bigger followers. I was helping more. Like, I helped a lot of people for free at the start because I had the full-time job. I wasn't too worried about making money off of it. So I was kind of getting good enough feedback from the people I was working with and the people I was helping for free. So I was finding I was getting more gratification from doing this work for free as opposed to doing my day-to-day job. So then I was like, right, in the middle of 2020, I had an opportunity to work with Brian Keane from Brian Keane Fitness, if anyone's familiar with him, as work as his assistant, just doing his emails. But he was going to give me kind of some career guidance of how to take my page to the next level and take my PT to the next level. And it was in the middle of 2020 when the world was shut down. I was like, look, if I can make this work now, I'll make it work when everything's back open now again. And that was August 2020. So we're nearly 4 years later, and I've gone from working with Brian to working in gyms to working with people with all different goals and ailments. I was working in a commercial gym that a lot of older generations were working there as well. So they might have a hip replacement, a knee replacement, and they're looking at just being able to get off the couch more comfortably. And then you have high-level elite athletes you're working with online. So I've kind of worked with a wide variety of different people in circuit classes, spin classes, one-to-one sessions. So I kind of have lots of experience of working with different people, but it always kind of comes back to I like improving the average player to a higher level. I find that's really beneficial for me. I get more gratification of that as opposed to getting an elite level athlete from, a 98% to 99%. I know it's massive for them, But in terms of getting your average Joe from being on the bench for the second team to now starting on the second team to pushing on for starting on the first team, I think that's second class. And I've got a good experience of that. The people who were not really starting on the second team who are now mainstays in the first team from programs, and I think that's fucking deadly. I get such gratification from that, and I have worked with some higher end athletes who've moved their bench press from maybe 100 kilos to 105, and they're absolutely delighted with themselves. But and it was a smaller thing. The higher up you go, the smaller the margins are going to be. But getting someone that massive difference, who are losing maybe 10 or 20 kilos, I think that's fucking deadly. And they're more confident themselves, and they're happier. I think that's the kind of, I suppose, my little work balance. So I suppose having that background of science and kind of applying the blueprint as such, I suppose it's kind of, I'm very process oriented. Obviously, worked in science, everything has a procedure. You follow step A to step B or to step Z, and you have to do this at a certain time, and you have to do this at a certain time. So, using myself as my own experiment, I suppose you want to look at it that way. If you want to say that if I'm a scientist and such, that okay, these are the experiments I've tried on myself. Here's what has worked. Here's what hasn't worked. Okay, I'm going to take what has worked. I'm going to apply that to people online. When that works for them, that's fantastic. Now we have a blueprint of an idea of someone who is in a similar situation. What doesn't work for them? Okay, we have one pair here that doesn't work. Let's find an alternative for them so they can find something that works. So then you're kind of looking at a tree of solutions. You coming down this way. Does that work? Yes and no. You can go left and right. So you always kind of have I always kind of, this is explaining what goes on in my head, that when I'm working with people, well, what's the starting point? What's the end goal? If you're looking at it that way, how can I get from here down to here? And it's not going to be a straight line down, because that's going to be too easy. So you're going to have branches. You're going to come out this way. You're going to come out this way again. And it's just about finding what works for each individual person to get them to where they want to be, or towards where they want to be. So always having a big ambitious goal is great. I think it's always having a big massive goal that is it going to be attainable or not. Sometimes you're questioning yourself, but it's about having processes in place, and a plan to follow to get you closer towards there. So let's just say a 16-year-old now, as an example, their starting point is under 16 on a county development panel, not necessarily starting. Their end goal is, I want to be starting on the senior inter-county team in 5 years. Okay, it's a goal. It is realistic. It's not too ambitious to say now you want to be president of Ireland. It's going to be a little bit different. But we have a goal here now. You're on a development panel. You're obviously a decent enough player to be on the panel. How do we get you to be the best player in the county, or been on the county panel now? So then we have 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, with a process to follow, different plans, different branches, and that. And it's just about slowly working towards that. So what's year 1, year 2, year 3, month 1, month 2, or even week 1, week 2, week 3? Having small term goals that's going to get you closer to the long term goal. Because it's all well and good having a big, massive, ambitious goal at the end, but how are you going to get there, and how are you going to measure that? If that's the only thing you're looking at, you have to have certain metrics to hit before you hit that. Even if it is weight loss, if you're 100 kilos at the moment and you want to be 80 kilos, you have to hit 99, 98, 97. You have to hit each kilo on the way down until you get to your goal target. You're not going to go directly from 1 down to 80 in the space of 2 weeks. It could be a 6-month process, and that's the same with any goal. You have to have a process to follow so you're able to hit that goal. And I think having small term goals, even if that is, I'm just going to go to my 3 trains this week. If you hit that every single week, you're going to improve as a player. And then maybe you look at, if that starts to plateau, have a look at your intensity in training. Are you pushing yourself hard enough? Are you always going against your buddy in the runs because you know you're faster and fitter than him, but you're never coming top? Maybe you need to go against the older player who used to play for the county, and maybe that's the person you need now to race against because he's faster and fitter than you. You're never going to improve beating your friend all the time. Maybe it is a case you have to go against the better players to make you a better player. So again, that's your goal for the next 3 months. I'm going to race against Mick instead of racing against Tom, or whatever the case may be, and having a new goal each week. Again, side tangent there, but that's kind of the way I look at it. That I suppose I would have always been process oriented, and that would have led me down to the science side of things, because everything has a process. I guess, well, not an experimental physicist or anything like that, but in terms of chemistry, in terms of biology, like everything is there. And when you're working in industry as well, everything. You're never going to be asked to recite something you learned in college when you're working in industry. Everything has a process, and everything is dummified. That if you make a mistake, it shouldn't be a case that the answer wasn't in this SOP or a standard operating procedure. Everything needs to be put out, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And if you don't follow that correctly and you make a mistake, that's on you. Whereas if you followed it correctly and then a mistake happens, that's down to procedure, which is probably never going to happen if you're looking at these multi-global organizations like Abbott or Pfizer or Medtronic or something like that. Everything's going to be covered in that sense. So I'm used to following processes and getting the results I want to get. If something went wrong, then I'm used to looking back at what I did wrong because the process is right. So again, going back to my own performances, what I done is wrong. The process, like, I suppose, getting fit and getting to perform at a high level is simple, but it's not easy. Everyone kind of know if you dedicate your full life to playing better, you'd get there. Now, I know not everyone has that opportunity to do that, but if I'm training, if I had the opportunity to train 8 times a week while I was working at 9 to 5, at the moment now I have a lot more time to work on these things. If my performance isn't where it needed to be, I've done something wrong, because I have nothing but time and I'm training so often. And I think that's a big thing where people will blame everyone else for their own conditioning. You're the only person that can control your conditioning. If you're not getting enough in training, you need to get out and do more yourself, or put more effort in training. If you're not able to kick the ball over the bar, that's you that's not doing that. It's not your manager picking someone else or telling you to do something or fulfill a certain role. If you're not able to kick the ball over the bar, kick the ball to your teammate, there's only one person that can improve that, and that's yourself. So I suppose that's kind of a long-winded answer that I suppose coming through the science world to coming into the PT world and getting a similar gratification of having a process and getting a result, and then the byproduct of that is making people happy as well.
I can definitely relate to that. I did 4 years of engineering, or finished out the degree in engineering, and did my placement year in it as well. And a lot of those processes and the process orientated nature of it, and the structures and everything else has definitely helped with how it's carried over to working with people and structuring their goals and the process of getting there, and also probably from a business end point of view of being able to have those structures in place so that you're not missing out on communication with clients, and you're not letting things fall through the cracks, and you're making sure everyone's taken care of, and that's been very beneficial as well. And I think it is a useful thing to have in place, and I'm sure it was maybe something that your personality naturally led you towards the science side of things as well, but also having learned from the actual job as well. So a quick other one. I know you're a big football boot man, and I wanted to ask you, what is your favourite football boot from a looks perspective, but also from a performance perspective?
Mine is always going to be the Predator Mania from 2002. I think it's probably widely considered the best Predator and the best boot of all time by a lot of people. I think that's enough reason as to why I think it's the best, because so many people are in the same boat as me. I think it's just from growing up. And the reason I like it so much is I was 8 when it came out. And you're thinking of 2002 World Cup. You're thinking of the telly being brought in, and when Ireland were playing Germany or Ireland were playing these games. And I was at an age that I was understanding how the tournaments were starting to work. Like I remember France '98 been on, and I remember the Euros 2000 been on, but not really understanding the dynamics of it. You might know. Like Ireland weren't in that, so there probably wasn't much coverage or hype about it. Whereas, when I was 8, I would have had the PlayStation, I would have had FIFA, I would have been a Liverpool supporter, I would have been getting familiar with how the Premier League actually works. So when you're younger, you pretend to know what's going on, but really you're just following your team. You don't know who wins and how. So 2002 would have been where I kind of was understanding how tournaments work, was understanding the Premier League, and I knew a lot of different players, and I just always was interested in shoes and football boots anyway. I'm not sure where that came from, but I just was always interested in what people were wearing. And I remember when the boots came out, and just the big red tongue with the white fins and then the white sole plate with the red studs on it. I remember I know Damien Duff with the white pair, he's wearing them during the World Cup then as well. And I remember just thinking they were the coolest boots in the world. Even though I was a Liverpool supporter, I think David Beckham was everyone's little idol when they were growing up. Just the way he was able to strike the ball, hit the free kicks, and he had all the different colours of the boots. And just wanting to kind of replicate that. And even, I know I'm not a massive Mayo fan of by any means, but you're looking at Kieran McDonald and Colin Corkery. They had all the kind of big players were wearing these as well. For traditionally GAA players that always wore Prima Kings or Copa Mondials or Umbro Specials. But I think 2002 is when you kind of seen the big switch that a lot more players are wearing these Predators. And again, been more up in tune with how the actual All-Ireland worked as well. You would have followed your county, you would have followed the big games. But when I was 8, it was kind of like, okay, I'm starting to understand how the provincials work, and the league is different, and everything's kind of coming together in the summertime in September. But when you're watching the games, all you see is the red heel, the red tongue, and the white sole plate. They're the best boot ever in my mind. So growing up with that, I always would try to get pairs when I was older. So I had every model of them. I had the takedown model, the lowest tier, and then I've been lucky enough to have some of the of the top end models over the years, and as well. So I think I've had every version of it at some point or another. I've had a couple of the remakes then as well. So I have the nostalgia feel with it. Now, in terms of comfort and in today's boots compared to then, they're not as comfortable as the newest Predators out now at the moment. The Predator 24s or Elite, whatever they're called. I have them with the tongue to kind of nearly a callback to the old Predator Manias. They are probably the most comfortable boot I've ever worn in my life. But if I had a choice now, if someone said a brand new pair of new Predators or a brand new pair of Predator Manias, I would take the hand off the Predator Mania every single day of the week. I don't care how comfortable they feel compared to the new ones. I think they look better, and I'm of an opinion that if you look good, feel good, you play good.
Yeah, and there was always that thing with them around the white, what would you call them, the white grips on them that that was supposed to allow you to curl the ball or whatever else. But I don't know how true that was, but it still gave you that feeling, and harken back to what we talked about earlier, give you that confidence maybe that you were able to do that. So therefore, maybe you took on the shots, maybe you tried the one that you wouldn't have before, and maybe as a consequence indirectly ended up maybe kicking over a couple that you wouldn't have kicked over. And I remember I had those, back probably like a couple of years after they were out, I remember picking up a pair that were the full, because if I'm right in saying there was a full, the real version as you called it, that did have the screw-in studs as well.
Yes.
Which were very rare, and I got a pair of those for 20 quid in JJB. But at the time, they were it was probably shortly after they were released, but maybe a couple of years later. So they didn't have the thing that they have now of that nostalgia to them or anything like that. So they were on sale in the same way a pair of boots from 2 or 3 years ago would be on sale. But I sort of now I'm like, I wish I just kept them in one way. But they could nearly sit up on your book stand now as like a piece of art. But I got good use out of them, I'm sure, and had many over the years of different Predators as well. I liked the ones. It might have been the ones directly after those, or maybe two versions later. There was a gunmetal version, where the stripes went directly the whole way under and out the other side.
Oh yeah, the Predator Pulse. They were the year after, 2004.
So I like them ones as well. But then, towards senior football, any senior football I played, it was kind of an unwritten rule around us that you had to stick to the black boots. So I was a Copa Mundial or Adidas World Cup the whole time. But and I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't scoring enough points to justify buying anything else. I was a cornerback, so I stuck to the Copas. But as a sort of final question on that route, if you're able to have a coffee and a chat with three people, dead or alive, maybe to get a bit of advice or wisdom or just insight of some description, would you have 1 to 3 people that come to mind that you would ask?
Number one, I think I go with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was a massive wrestling fan growing up, and I've seen a thing the other day. It was like, the things you enjoy in your 30s, you go back to what you enjoyed as a 13-year-old. So over lockdown, I could start watching all these old wrestling stuff again. I think I would 100% every day of the week just to I'd have a beer, have a pint of Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think it was the first person that come to mind. Again, you're kind of. Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be like just to kind of to go over all the stuff. I know that all do podcasts now and that. And when I was kind of starting my page first, I'd be embarrassed to say that you'd watch wrestling and that. And when you get older, the more you realise that no one actually cares about what you do and what you say. Like if someone tried to say to me, "Oh, you're a gobshite for liking wrestling," right? Fair enough. I'm still going to watch it. Like I don't care what someone says at this stage. So I think number one, I think I'd have Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just for the crack, more than anything else. In terms of insights of another two, I'm quite big into music, and I think having a chat with someone like J. Cole would be really cool. I'm a big J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Mac Miller fan. Them kind of be my three favourite kind of. If I was listening to music for the sake of listening to music, it'd be them. Whereas when I'm in the gym now, I listen to mad heavy metal and stuff. But in terms of like if I relax and listen to music, if I was going to actually watch something to enjoy it, that'd be kind of genre. I know Mac Miller has passed, obviously, but I think maybe like a Mac Miller, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, I think they'd be really cool to kind of sit down and have a chat and just kind of have different perspectives on stuff, and maybe ask about music and things like that. I think not everything has to be sport orientated. I think there's so many different areas of life that people, I think when everyone obviously in GA circle, it is a big part of our lives, and we can revolve a lot of our lives around it. But at the end of the day, it is just a hobby. It is just one part of it. And I think sometimes they kind of think that if GAA didn't exist, what would I be interested in? And if all your conversations are always around GAA, how many conversations are you missing out on with people trying to hear about different things, different perspectives, that maybe someone has a perspective on farming that can be influential to you in your workplace if you're working in a desk-based job. There's always different kind of ways and different things. People have different perspectives on things. So I think not always going for the 3 big footballers or 3 big sports people here. Probably the third one will probably be a sports person, I suppose. You can't really call Stone Cold a sports person as such. He'd be more of an entertainer, and J. Cole would be more of a on the music side of things. But if you're going to call in then a sports person, I think my idol growing up, if you're looking at soccer as opposed to Gaelic growing up, it'd be someone like Steven Gerrard. It'd be someone I looked up to a lot when I was younger, being a Liverpool fan, and just like been in the depths of some of those, and that Liverpool banter era, as they say, that been able to pull those teams to the standards and win Champions Leagues and win FA Cups with a very, very mediocre team. But he was a kind of driving force behind that, and just maybe get kind of a bit of the mindset side of things, how he was gone to Chelsea twice but still managed to say like what were like the reasons behind it. Obviously you're not going to tell you all your secrets, but I suppose just to kind of have those conversations with a high level athlete. Not saying GA players aren't elite level, but having someone who was on a world stage and kind of how they deal with stuff, and kind of getting a bit more insights into the I'm very always interested in the behind the scenes stuff. I know I was chatting to Rory Croskery, who was in the Man United Academy for years, and I had him on my podcast, and I was asking him about silly things about like how did the kit men work, and when did you get the gear, and did you get a choice of getting the first team gear at the end of the year and stuff like that? Just because I'd be interested in, like, again, going back to football boots, I'd be interested, how do they get them? How do they get all the gear and stuff? And he was like really giddy because he's like, oh, no one asked me this before. He's like, oh yeah, there used to be kit man John or whatever his name was, and he was really good crack. And at the end of the year, they used to open the first team room and everyone would come in and try and get their favourite players' gear and boots. And he said he'd like Marion Fellaini's boots, and his brother stole them all from then, and he's loads of tracksuits from the first team. But the kind of the behind the scenes stuff that people probably wouldn't find interesting, but I'd love to know, like, do they have any input into the gear they get, or is it like Adidas just tell them here's what you're getting, alongside obviously the great sporting wisdom that he'd have then as well, but just kind of silly things like that. I suppose if you want to have like a 4-way coffee or a 4-way table, Stone Cold Steve Austin, J. Cole and Steven Gerrard, I think would be a nice combination of myself in there all chatting ring. So I think it'd be a good crack.
Yeah. I think that's interesting about the behind the scenes, and it's probably part of what the podcast here is as well, is to give a bit of an insight. And that's why I like to ask questions around interests outside of sport and that as well, because I think people find it valuable even to get a bit of a behind the scenes of the likes of yourself or people who I'm talking to, where we're posting a lot of stuff obviously about performance, about training, about nutrition, but at the end of the day, everyone I think has an interest in what goes on behind the scenes of someone who they are potentially looking up to, or potentially are going to them for information in one area. I think it's always just gives that little bit of extra relatability to hear about the behind the scenes as well, and even to to bring out those aspects of your interest in wrestling and the hip hop music as well. And I think it's an interesting thing to go through. So glad you were able to share it. So just to finish off, where if anyone's listening, would you like to send them to follow along with your stuff?
So on Instagram and TikTok, Gaz Gaelic Guide will get me there. So GAZ Gaelic Guide. And that's basically where everything is. I have links. I have a link tree there if you want to come on board for coaching or plans or anything like that, or just kind of. I have lots of free content there on improving GA performance, skills work, and I've more kind of shite on TikTok, just posting nonsense and posting other videos then as well. If you're interested in light-hearted stuff and kind of maybe a bit of a laugh then as well. But TikTok or Instagram, Gaz Gaelic Guide is the best place to get me.
Thanks Thanks for listening, and if you consider yourself an everyday athlete, whether you play sport or want to pursue other athletic goals, consider checking out the Everyday Athlete program at the link in the episode description. There you'll find what's involved in the program, testimonials from the lads we work with, and how to apply.